pilot never heard it coming. Lieutenant Colonel Dale Zelko was flying the most advanced combat aircraft on Earth, an F-117 Nighthawk, invisible to radar. 3 weeks into a war, his stealth fighter had dominated without a scratch. Then his cockpit flashed red, and the plane radar wasn't supposed to be able to see, was falling out of the Serbian night in flames. How do you shoot down an aircraft you can't even see? On March 27, 1999, someone on the ground, with a missile older than the pilot he was hunting, had just answered that question. This is the story of how he did it, the one night stealth failed, and the patient, disciplined crew who made it happen. Because the F-117's invincibility was never a law of physics, it was a habit. And on that night, someone on the ground decided to stop playing along. To understand what was lost that night, you have to understand what the Nighthawk meant. When it was revealed to the public in 1988, it looked like nothing else in the sky. A jet built entirely from flat, angled panels, black as a hole in the night. Those facets were the whole point. A conventional aircraft reflects radar energy straight back to the dish that sent it. The F-117's faceted skin scattered that energy off into empty space, so that a 60,000-pound aircraft returned an echo the size of a small bird. To the radars that aimed missiles, it was very nearly not there at all. In the 1991 Gulf War, that translated into something close to a magic trick. F-117s flew more than 1,200 sorties over the most heavily defended airspace on Earth, struck the bunkers and command posts in the heart of Baghdad, and not one was hit. Not one was even seriously engaged. The legend hardened into doctrine. The Nighthawk was the aircraft they sent where nothing else could survive. By 1999, an entire generation of planners had simply stopped imagining it could be touched. But stealth carried a secret limitation written into the physics that made it work. The F-117's shaping was tuned against the radars that actually guide weapons, fire control radars working in short wavelengths, just centimeters long. Against those, the facets were nearly perfect. But radar is not one thing, it is a whole spectrum of wavelengths. And the oldest radars in the world worked at the other end of it, wavelengths measured not in centimeters, but in meters. And against those long, old wavelengths, a stealth aircraft does not disappear. Its panels and edges become the wrong size to hide. They resonate. They light up. The men who designed the F-117 knew this, that judged it an acceptable risk, because the radars that saw it that way were ancient, low resolution, and could never guide a missile to a target. They could tell you something was out there. They could not tell you precisely where. That gap, that single gap, was where the whole legend lived. 3 weeks into the bombing, in the hills outside Belgrade, a man was studying that gap very carefully. His name was Colonel Zoltán Dani, and he commanded the 3rd Battalion of the 250th Air Defense Missile Brigade. His weapon was a museum piece. The S-125 Nieva, NATO called it the SA-3, was a Soviet surface-to-air missile system first fielded in 1961. By 1999, it was 38 years old. On paper, it was exactly the kind of obsolete hardware NATO's planners expected to brush aside in the opening hours of the war. Dani had other ideas. He understood that his enemy's greatest weapon was not a missile at all. It was the anti-radiation missile, the HARM, which homed in on any radar that dared to switch on and destroyed it. So Dani almost never switched on. He kept his fire control radar silent, emitting in short, disciplined bursts of around 20 seconds, never long enough for a HARM to find him. He moved his entire battery constantly, hundreds of miles over the course of the war, so NATO could never map where his missiles were. And he posted human beings, spotters with field telephones and binoculars beneath the corridors where the bombers flew, so that even with his radar dark, he had eyes on the sky. Then he reached back for that old piece of physics. Dani's unit fed off a P-18 early warning radar, a long wavelength set working in the VHF band, the kind of radar the Nighthawk's designers had decided was harmless. It could not aim a missile.
But night after night, it could catch a faint, flickering ghost moving across the sky and tell Dani roughly where to point. He did not need a perfect picture. He only needed to know where to look and to be ready in the few seconds when looking would be enough.
NATO handed him those seconds. After 3 weeks of war, the air campaign had become a routine. The F-117s flew the same corridors on similar timetables night after night, the predictability that comes when you believe you cannot be hurt. And on the night of March 27th, the weather had grounded the EA-6B Prowlers, the electronic warfare aircraft that normally flew alongside the Nighthawks and blinded enemy radar with jamming. That night, the stealth fighters went in without their shield. They went in naked. In the cockpit of the aircraft with the call sign VEGA 3-1 was Lieutenant Colonel Dale Zelko. He rolled in toward his target exactly as he'd been trained, exactly as the mission demanded. And at the moment of attack, he opened his weapons bay doors to release his bombs. For a few seconds, the smooth, carefully shaped stealth aircraft was no longer smooth. 2 large doors swung open into the airstream, and the aircraft's radar signature jumped. The ghost on Dani's screen suddenly became something solid. His crew had been waiting for exactly that. They snapped on the fire control radar, found the target at close range, and fired 2 missiles into the dark. The first one detonated close enough. Its blast tore into the Nighthawk and threw it out of control, and at several hundred miles an hour, Lieutenant Colonel Dale Zelko reached down and pulled the ejection handle. He survived a savage ejection and came down under his parachute in a farm field near the village of Budanatsi, deep inside hostile territory, the most wanted man in Yugoslavia. For roughly 8 hours, he hid in an irrigation ditch while search parties moved through the fields around him, talking to rescuers on a small survival radio, waiting. Before dawn, a United States combat search and rescue team came in low and fast, pulled him out of the field, and carried him home. The pilot lived, the aircraft did not. Within days, Serbian civilians were posing for photographs on the wreckage, and within weeks, pieces of America's most secret aircraft were on their way to Russia and to China. So what actually died over Serbia that night? Not stealth. Stealth worked then, and it works now. The principles in that faceted skin run straight through the F-22 and the B-2 and the B-21 flying today. What died was the myth, the idea that any single technology makes an aircraft untouchable, that you can fly the same route on the same schedule forever because the enemy will always be a step behind. The Nighthawk was never invisible. It was a bet that the other side would not be paying close enough attention. For one night, someone was. The US learned the lesson hard, and it changed how it flew. No more predictable corridors, no more sending stealth in without support. And the Nighthawk that took the legend's place would be shaped against more than one wavelength. There is one more thing. Years after the war, the 2 men at the heart of that night, Dale Zelko, the pilot who fell, and Zoltán Dani, the colonel who shot him down, met face to face, not on a battlefield. By then, Dani had left the army and become a baker. The 2 men who had tried to kill each other across a few miles of dark Serbian sky sat down together and became friends. Zelko traveled to Serbia, walked into his home, and ate bread at his table. The night that broke stealth's spell, in the end, broke something else as well. A 38-year-old missile, a silent radar, 1 predictable night, and 1 open set of bay doors. That is all it took to bring down the aircraft the world had decided could not be touched, and to remind everyone who builds machines of war that the most dangerous thing in the sky is never the technology. It is the certainty that you have already won. If you want the story of the aircraft that replaced the Nighthawk and tried to learn its lesson, watch our breakdown next and subscribe at Klembotron for more from Bingo Fuel.